Views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
You know that moment when you realize you have mastered your wellness. When you've become so resilient, you can conquer any hiccup life throws you. Yeah, well, me either. But I still ride unicorns. I'll teach you how to become a mindset master. You will learn how your habits and behavior affect your success of nutrition, exercise, relationships, organization, and so much more. It's your reality, and you need to do it your way. Self-care and self-love are anything but selfish. Take charge, get excited. If not now, then when? Grab your espresso and get ready to talk all things wellness. It's time for Coach, Couch, and Coffee Radio with Coach Peggy Willms right now. Oh my gosh, you guys, welcome to Coach, Couch, and Coffee with Coach Peggy, and I'm here on Transformation Talk Radio. I cannot tell you, I'm excited. It's like Christmas morning. It's my first show here with Dr. Pat Basili, and we're going to do a full hour today. We're going to talk about why I want you to stop trying to get an A. We're going to talk about a BC wellness grade. So just take a break. And I want to make sure, take a deep breath, I should say. I want to remind you, I'm here at 3 Pacific, 6 Eastern time, every single Monday. We're going to fill up our unicorn mugs. Cheers, Dr. Pat, you got your mug? Oh, yeah. Fill it up with coffee, and she's got a, would you say that's a historic antique Dunkin'
It's an antique mug. It's the original DD.
Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts. Oh, yay. Okay, so we're going to talk about creative concepts and tools and strategies each Monday about everything wellness. And I am going to talk to you today about your real world and how we get to do you. We'll have guests call in, all that fun stuff in the next upcoming shows. So are you guys excited? Are you excited, Dr. Pat? Are you excited? We're going to talk about all of this stuff. We're going to talk about Dr. Pat's past and her battles with type A personalities and type A trying to get a 4.0. But first, can I say, Dr. Pat, how we met? Can I tell that story real quick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Yeah. I mean, this is really what we're talking about here today is we're talking about all the stuff we're talking about that has to do with us chasing our tail like a big fat dog.
She said it, you guys. She said it. That's right. We were big fat dogs. We might still be big fat dogs, but we'll see when we move along. All right. So I want to tell a story about how I met Dr. Pat. So as a health, wellness, and life coach, lots of times we stay away from certain subjects. Religion, we just try to kind of step back. And I just want to tell you that I was praying. I wanted so much for somebody to come and give me a bigger platform so I could share my story. I've been doing this for so long and help people with their passions. And I'm telling you, within 5 or 6 weeks or 5 or 6 days, Jessica from the show emailed me. And I don't know why I opened it, but I just have to tell you guys, she found me, and now I'm so excited to be a part of this family. And I want to tell you, Dr. Pat, thank you so much for you guys are so amazing. Yeah, love you, mean it. Okay, thoughts? Aren't you so excited to have me, Dr. Pat?
I'm very excited to do it because one of the things I know is that sometimes we try to put our hat on that says to us that we have to understand every nuance of everything about why anything happens at any point in time or doesn't happen at any point in time. And we can spend an enormous amount of time and energy trying to figure out for ourselves what is it about a future that we have no idea of how it's going to turn out is going to turn out to the point where our heads feel like our brains are going to come right out of our ears.
Yeah.
That's what happens. There's another word for it. Worry. It's called worry.
And fear for me, mine was fear.
Ooh.
I spent all of last year, seriously, all of last year going, where is it? Where is it? Worked so hard. Where is that next step? And then 2019, something happened. The energy's crazy in 2019. All right, you guys, let's get started. I want to really take some time to explain why I think a Wellness BC grade is so important. I want to talk first about what is a perfectionist. I'm going to give a little bit about my story, and then I'm going to hear Dr. Pat's story. And you guys, especially with wellness, we all try to get an A, and it doesn't last forever. So let me tell you my story. So I believe that all of us are an, aholic or have some sort of addiction throughout life. Mine was being a perfectionist, and I don't ever remember anybody telling me to be. I think it was innately in myself, that drive. And it goes way back. It goes back to when I was trying to mother my siblings, my appearance. I was a caretaker to everybody else. I wanted perfect grades, be perfect in sports, perfect friend. And then I had my son really young, my oldest son, and I went into a sport that was very judgmental and had some eating issues, when I was younger, just not anorexia or nervosa, but I just underate. And so I went into a sport that was really, really judgmental. So Miss Fitness, bodybuilding, all those yucky things. And then it landed me in corporate America as a workaholic. And that's where I thrived. It was a drug. I loved working long days. And then I have to tell you, something happened to me in 2011, 2012. I had 2 bad car accidents back to back. They were not my fault, just saying. And I recovered from that, but I kept giving to corporate America, giving and giving and giving and just getting my high. And then my youngest son had a very catastrophic motorcycle accident that put him out for 4 months at age 21 for me to take care of. And I sat in my bed with him every day, struggling to balance work, and realized corporate America wasn't going to treat me like all the A's I've given them, and all the time and the energy and the effort. I needed them to support me at that time. I needed to be home with my kiddo. And I just sat there. I remember sitting in the bed, and I had a piece of paper, and I said, what do I want to do and what do I don't want to do? Because I'm done. And I said, move. I moved to Florida, moved to the beach, started my own business, and just said, I can't do this 4.0 thing anymore. And I know some listeners out there, you guys are feeling the exact same way, battling that, getting that A. And Dr. Pat, I know you and I've talked about this, and I want to hear your story and hear how you got where you are and said, get it, done with the A's. So talk to me, sister.
Yeah, like what this is about is it's about, for me, when I think about this and I think about what you're talking about and I think about the show, I think we get confused in 2 areas. One of the areas we get confused in, and I got to really bring my mom into this, my stepmom. She's no longer with us, but she is the one that talked with us and taught us about the power of perseverance, right? Mm-hmm. And that often, perseverance, by the way, Coach, often gets confused with perfection. Yes. And I just want to clear the record up here in my street smart way. It's all about street smart for me. Here's the deal. Perfection and perseverance are not the same. Right. They're not the same. So here's the thing that my mom used to say. She used to say, I know that you're what you're capable of, to all of us. And when I see you giving up on yourself, right?
Yeah.
That's a real problem for me.
Yeah.
And so what she's saying is, she's not saying, I want you to just continue to become bone dry energy to reach a level of something that you're not capable of reaching. Right?
Interesting.
Like,
yeah.
I am not going to be a world-class golfer.
Gotcha.
Telling you right now. I don't even know what it's like to hit a ball that doesn't move. Doesn't even make sense to me. All my golfing friends, they're like, my God, Pat, you hit a little ball that travels at about 50, 60 miles an hour. Why can't you hit a golf ball? The answer is simple. It doesn't move. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to be able to be out in the world and enjoy the sport of golf if I choose to, correct?
That is so true.
Right.
So true. I'm glad you compared the difference. That's a good point.
But isn't that what we're talking about? Yeah. And the journey really is, how the heck do you figure out the difference? Because that's what you're all about. That's what you're talking about. That's the level that the coaching that you do is. If I want to quote achieve something, that's a word, achieve. But whether you want to achieve something or you want to be in the space of something, you have to really look at not just what that is, but what is motivating you to be at an obsession rate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, with 100%. The thing. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%. I'm glad you're bringing it up. You know, when I really thought about this subject a couple of years ago and I pushed this Wellness BC grade, I didn't get a lot of fans, to tell you. I did not get a lot of fans. They were talking about, why would you settle for less? Why would you not try to give every single thing your best? And what I want to talk to you guys today is just really about how to level the playing field and to be healthy long-term, live happier, healthier, and potentially longer. So, Kat, I want to ask you, we're kind of getting deep into this. Can we forego the break, the 15-minute break?
Yeah, let's forego the break. One of the things that I just want to get back to something you said, because I think this is really part of the confusion for a lot of people, Coach. And I think the confusion is the idea of perfection versus being the best you want to be.
Yeah.
And I think that there is clearly a conversation to have about that. If we took everything off of our system for grading in school, if we got rid of grades, and there are some schools that are doing this,
right,
but said to our students, here's where you are today, and here's where you want to go, right? So let's just say, here's where you are. You want to be a doctor. So here's where you are today, and you want to be a doctor. And in order for you to be a doctor, you must knock off all these things on your checklist to do. Right. Now, to be a doctor, you have to make sure that you are practicing in a way that does no harm.
Mm-hmm.
And so off you go with that. But the idea is that we start to look at these things in our lives that we don't really even want to do, and we try to do them perfectly.
Right.
And so
absolutely,
don't you find that this is the confusion where parents, teachers drive children to get an A and an A plus for the very fact of getting it, and nothing else matters?
What was so interesting to me? Do you remember the year where you were getting over 100% for a test, or higher than a 4.0? I thought, what are we doing to society that you're even better than, how can you get better than 100? I remember that. So let me explain what my thought was when I started looking at wellness and naming my business 3 wellness pillars. So I really believe there are kind of 3 areas, 3 boxes that we can look at, because remember, wellness is all consuming of everything, our lifestyle, our organization, everything. So I thought, let's put nutrition in a bucket. Let's put exercise in a bucket. And then the third one, let's throw everything else. Let's throw organization and spirituality and relationships. And to me, the mindset, the third pillar, is truly the glue, the confidence, the accountability, the motivation that keeps pillar 1, nutrition, in check. And then the second pillar, exercise, in check. So that's how I developed 3 wellness pillars. And then the way that I really started thinking about the BC grade are just these residual comebacks of clients, not just mine, but they've worked with other people and coming back and just saying, I can't do it. I tried to do this diet full bore. I tried to go ahead and run this marathon. And then my husband left me, and, all these things. And I really started to realize that chasing those A's down one lane is such a disservice to the whole spectrum of our entire life. So that's kind of, the way I pulled this all together. But I don't have all fans when it comes to getting a BC average, I'll have to tell you. So we'll go through some examples, of those later on. But what are your thoughts when you first heard, Dr. Pat, where I talked about 3 wellness pillars? What kind of sunk in with you? What were your thoughts?
Well, I think just the very fact that you're using the word wellness is very telling.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a balance. Yeah, it's a balance.
Well, but when you say the word wellness, I think of like a process. I think of more of a journey as opposed to an end game.
Agree.
Right.
Agree.
I mean, I think of it like that. And so for me, what it does when I hear you is it aligns perfectly for enabling folks to say, wait a minute, there are these 3 pillars, this approach. This is about the balancing act. But what does that really mean? What it means is, one, in order for us to look at this, you have to have an assessment of where you are today.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have to be awake and aware enough to know that there's some area of your life that needs some help. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think to speak to that, one of the things when I am able to explain specific examples of what I mean is, are you really getting an A if you're on this hardcore diet and hanging out in the gym all the time and everything else is falling apart? I mean, is that really an A if you lost 20 pounds on a diet and then what? Is it really an A when you work so hard, 50 hours a week, and you're not taking your kids to soccer and there's, those other areas, and you're just driving down one lane at a 4.0 and everything else is falling apart? So that's really what I'm talking about, is figuring out where individuals are. We are all in very, very different spots. Where are individuals with their nutrition, their exercise, and trying to do that seesaw balance for each person individually. And that's what takes time. It's a process to figure out, all of us. That's why I'm in business, because I get to love everybody long term.
Well,
I mean, a long time.
If you go back to the 3 pillars, let's just talk about those for a minute. You can almost think it almost like a hologram. You can almost think about it like, here are the 3 pillars, right? And we're looking at them. And we're thinking about, how do we integrate all of these things, right, into our lives? And, we think about not just how we show up in the world physically, but how we take really good care of ourselves so that we can show up in the world.
That's right.
Physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Absolutely.
Because if we can't show up the way that this body was meant for us to show up, and it is, our bodies, this is a miracle.
Right.
Right? What we got going on here is like a miracle.
So true.
It's like a master system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes, and I get this from my own healing journey of being really, really sick. And one of the things that I was struck by is my body just wants me to treat it well. And part of that is my mind.
Right.
Just wants me to treat it well. It has a mechanism all on its own that can do things in such a magnificent way. But even as simplified as that, we just don't do it.
Well, and I think for me, I was such a bad student. I still can be. Trust me, I haven't got this thing nailed either. I ride around on unicorns. I say that. And I say that lovingly, because that is my metaphor of really trying to find the beauty in the world, the magic in the world, and kind of earning my own Emmy every day is just to get back up. But really what I kept finding over and over, Dr. Pat, is I kept getting sick. Anybody who's listening, who has known me for years, is like, well, she finally said it. But I mean, my mom used to say to me, you're going to die being healthy. And I used to think, well, what the heck does that mean? But it's so true. I kept getting sick and I did not see the signs until it was right here. I didn't catch them all the time, but you're right. My body would just break down and break down and break down. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I think that's funny, that comment, right? I think that's worth repeating what your mom said, because I find our moms are brilliant, right?
Yes,
just absolutely brilliant. Everything from garbage in, garbage out, you make your bed, you sleep in it. I mean, there's just a million things that we grew up as kids with, right? Yeah,
absolutely. The
when
other
we think about perfection in the way you're talking about, we don't live on a perfect planet. Even if you removed everything out of the gate, in some ways, it doesn't get any better than Earth before we got here. In other ways, it's always adjusting and changes. So yesterday's or billions of years ago, that view of Earth has changed because there's an evolution. And so when an entity goes through a change or a transformation, then if you're striving for perfection, you're always looking at a moving target. I happen to play a sport that I don't know to this date anyone on the planet has been able to play perfectly. Now, there are some players that play it that come dang near close, but not really sure. Even the number one, number two, they do not have games where they are all 11 and the other person is 0. And I'm talking people that have really put in the time and effort to play at the rate that they love, right?
Right. No,
Don't
I
you
agree.
find that perfection really gets tainted when we strive to do something that we really don't want to do? See, we strive for perfection's sake. And if we do that, don't you think we lose something?
Well, and I see that specifically when people come to me that are significantly overweight and they're so hyper focused on the cookie cutter world and the cookie cutter, diets and exercise programs that they never take the time. And, what I work with them and try to get them to understand is we all bring our journeys forward. We all bring our habits and our habit history and how we cope with loss or resiliency and sustainability, which we're going to talk about. But we all have to take that into consideration that we're looking at striving towards that end. Like you just said, we're trying so hard to get to where? What? That you lose all the weight and you put it back on? Is that where we're headed? No. We're headed in that path to get healthier than we were yesterday. And in that, you have to dial it back to be able to look across the lines and live life right there. Go for walks, spend time with your kids. Because it doesn't matter if you lose 100 pounds if you put it all back on. What's the point of that? An example I want to give is a successful and an unsuccessful, perhaps, approach. An A approach and a B and C approach is if you look at somebody who's overweight and they want to, this is what I hear all the time, I want to run a 5K. And you look at that and they might come to me and say, okay, I've decided I'm going to do this. I'm going to dive in. And now off they head to do what? They haven't walked. They have no idea how sore they're going to be. They don't have the right shoes. They just sign up and there they go. And they haven't thought about how they're going to eat, how it'll affect their sleep, how they're going to eat. I mean, it changes everything, eat at work. And so a successful person who wants to lose weight and sign up for a 5K and be successful has to balance all three pillars. They have to say, well, how do I dial back my nutrition a little bit? Because I want to lose some weight. How do I move a little bit more each day based on yesterday or last week, which might be 0? So how do I move that a little bit forward? And then this huge bucket over here of self-confidence and relationships and realizing that I have the choice to find my A. That's a successful person who signs up for a 5K who wants to lose weight versus someone chasing that A to what? Finish the event. You got a medal. Yay. Now what? Woo. So anyway.
We got a few medals back here. But, it's really interesting. We're talking about that. There is a conversation that you have, and I know you have it, about the difference between showing up in the capacity that we're meant to show up. And I got to tell you, as human beings, we have been given so many gifts and talents that becoming mediocre is not really one of them. We all have levels, but mediocre is an interesting word. It doesn't mean that we've shown up and done our best. That is not what that word means. Mm-hmm. Even if your best is a C, you've at least known that you've shown up and you've done your best. I was clearly not going to get a higher grade in a couple of classes when I went back to school. I just wasn't. And it had to be okay. It had to be okay that I wasn't going to get an A in statistics. That wasn't my goal, to get an A in statistics, right? My goal was to finish this degree. And if I didn't get an A in statistics, I was not going to lose sleep over that.
Right. I agree.
But that's not always the case, right?
Yeah.
You know, we're not all signed up. We haven't all said, I want to get an Olympic gold medal in ice skating. I mean, maybe you did. I didn't do that.
No, not so much. No,
I didn't.
I wasn't that much of a perfectionist.
But I must say, for me, I grew up playing sports. From like, I can't even remember a time. I just can't.
Me too.
But most of them were team sports.
Okay.
But then I started to play an individual sport. But then you had to play in partners. Now, if you ever want to be challenged about a game, and we have a lot of them, basketball, and we're team sports, but try playing the fastest racket sport on the planet with another person that sometimes is a half an inch away from your butt, and try not to get hit with all of his or her might by a wooden paddle that could literally gouge your eyeballs out.
Welcome to Dr. Pat's weekend of ping pong, right?
Now, what I want to say about that is, this is a sport. Not only are we teaching children now, but did you know that this is also a sport, because of the nature of it, that can decrease Alzheimer, right? Dementia. No, watch, right?
Interesting.
Dementia. And they actually, for you folks, I think I'll give you, I don't know, I'll look it up so I give you the right website, Bat Foundation, I think it's called. But this is the research now on this sport. And there's a reason for it, Coach Peggy, and I hope we talk about this today. I do not want to confuse and I'm like, and they're like, no, we know you're off completely, but you seem a little tired.
Yeah.
So this is part of what you teach, though.
Right.
When you put those pillars together, you're saying, if we're going to do nutrition, you're going to focus your attention on nutrition. We're going to do this, you're going to focus over here on this. We're going to talk mind, you're going to focus on this.
Right.
I don't think we know how to do that so well.
And when we come back, we are going to talk about the roller coaster of life, which is what I call the RCL, because guess what? We all have crap. We're not that special. We all have crap. So we're going to talk about the roller coaster of life, and then 2 skills that I think are super, super important with maintaining this BC, and that's resiliency and sustainability. So I am Coach Peggy, and I'm here on Coach, Couch, and Coffee with my unicorn mug. I'm going to go fill this sucker back up. We're going to see you really, really soon. We're going to talk about how living life healthier, happier, and longer is all about sustainability and resiliency. So stay tuned. We're going to be right back. Couch and Coffee with Coach Peggy Willms. That's me. And we are going to come back. We're talking about resiliency, sustainability, when we're talking about getting that wellness BC grade. We've been talking about kind of dropping that straight A mentality. We're going to talk about the roller coaster of life a little bit more. But first, I'd like to let you know how you can find me. I work with clients all over the world. I work mostly virtually, so there's no excuses. You get to pop up on my screen, and we can work through your wellness. You can find me at 3wellnesspillars.com. That is my website, and on there, I've got all sorts of things. I've got a blog, and I've got an e-commerce store, so you can actually shop by pillar, nutrition, exercise, mindset. And then you can email me from there, and all my social media links, YouTube, and all that fun stuff is there. With clients all over the world. I work mostly where we can stalk you.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, thank you. Thank you for the flowers, Coach Peggy. They're absolutely beautiful. Thank you for them. I really appreciate them, and I appreciate you. This has been a lifelong journey for myself and my family, by the way. And I think I shared with you that my sister passed away on a hospital floor at about 450 pounds. So I really am speaking from experience here for quite a bit. For those of you out there, I'm Dr. Pat. You can listen to me and find me at the drpatshow.com. As well as Coach Peggy here, you can go to transformationtalkradio.com. That's the best way to kind of tune in, turn us on. That's what we love to do. really.
Absolutely. God, I'm so glad that you're here with me. It's such a blessing to be a part of your family, seriously. I was so excited to start this radio show, you guys, but I'll tell you, maybe because I'm a type A, you have no idea what I did this week. I got to tell you a secret. I probably went into the system and changed my content a million times this week. And Wednesday last week, I had a mini Coach Peggy breakdown, meltdown. And I did not sit here with my mug either. So that was probably the first thing I should have done is filled up my unicorn mug. But you know what? It took me to come and sit right here in my chair and say, Peggy, you're doing coach, couch, and coffee. You wanted to have fun. You wanted to get your content out there to real people in the real world and have them not give up on themselves and chase other people's exact nutritious, their lane. And you guys, it's $1 trillion industry. If wellness was figured out, it wouldn't be $1 trillion industry. And we're bouncing, fad this, fad that. So what I just want to say to you guys is I'm honored to be a part of your family. We want to talk to you about the roller coaster of life real quick. I want to jump on that. If you think about the metaphor of a roller coaster, the ups and the downs and the loop-de-loos and how it can throw you off, how your stomach goes down into a pit, but yet there are times of elation when you're getting ready to go to the top. The bottom is going to fall out. Life is like that. And that affects wellness immensely. What are you going to do if you need a knee replacement? Do you have other alternative exercises in your hip pocket? Figure out what you can do versus can't. What are you going to do, with your nutrition if you're sick? How are you going to eat? So really what we want to think about is trying to plan for plan A's and B's. Motivation, accountability buddies. So let's talk resiliency. So resiliency simply just means how we bounce back, like a rubber band. How do we bounce back in life? And honestly, the best way to become resilient is to be street smart, just like Dr. Pat, right? The more variables you have in your life, you're just way more resilient. But we're not going to create a lot of those. We're not going to say, hey, make me homeless so I know how to live in a house. We're not going to say, give me a big injury or illness so that I can recover. So resiliency is super, super important. And Dr. Pat, I was wondering if you could chat with me. Let me understand if maybe you found one, I always say lane or one drive pillar you were in, and you were just hyper-focused. Whether it was like, oh, I'm going to do a diet, or maybe it was your ping pong, I don't know, golf, that you lost track of other things. You got off track with balance, your wellness.
Yeah. I think I'm no different than anybody else. And if you ask people why they work 60, 70 hours a week, right? If I looked at that and I go back, career, what we have now is what gets more folks derailed is really looking at the degree by which fear drives us in the workplace to give pretty much everything else up. Now, back in the day, it was that you worked really hard and then you would get the pension. So up until 1991, pretty much, that metaphor, which actually was a rule, which actually was a promise, which actually was the psychological contract of work, that was a thing. And so what happens with something like that, if you're me and you're caught in the window of working for 24 and a half years like that, where you sacrifice leg, limb, and everything else, only to get caught at the very beginning of the repeal of the psychological contract of this, when all bets are off, where there is no longer a responsibility for me to give you, after 24 years of service, even give you a pension, right? Yeah. So there we are with that, because this is one of those things where, I put my eggs in somebody else's basket. So this is really the difference between perfection and excellence, right? Because in the scope of things, I learned how to strive to be the best that I could be. My problem was when I made it conditional. And that was, I'm going to strive to be the best that I could be so you could be the best that you could be. So in the end, if I continue to strive beyond any metaphor that my mom ever gave me for my success and your success, into a never-ending pot of lack of fulfillment and to really be in the place of people pleasing for a contract that no longer exists, I am going to burn out, burn up, fizzle out, die out, only to be disappointed because I have put everything into an expectation that doesn't belong to me.
Exactly.
And so this is for me, when I think about roller coaster, I'm thinking about how often we put all our eggs into somebody else's basket and never look into our basket at breakfast time to say, holy crap, I don't have any eggs for breakfast.
Right. You know what was interesting for me, and I didn't realize it till later, and I see some traits in my kiddos with this too, is that the anger and resentment that builds when you are trying so hard to be your best, just innately perhaps, but then you want the company or the people, or for me, my clients to be the best. And what do you get back out of it? And in the business world, I unfortunately did that for years without recognizing that, girl, you may never get anything back. You got to love what you're doing for doing it in the moment. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about with sustainability. The reason I love to really think about this with wellness and kind of hit it home is the fact that if you are resilient, you can bounce around with the things life throws you. Well, then what are you going to do to sustain a certain level of wellness? And that's, at a BC level, let's say. How are you going to sustain that if you are wanting to run that 5K and you haven't walked for weeks or months, and you start to, you might be lucky to do every other day, but we have to ask ourselves, how long can we sustain that? How long can we sustain this diet? How long can we sustain the relationships we're in without asking for help or babysitters and that type of stuff? So to me, the two are just absolute skills that go hand in hand to be able to keep you kind of there, because an A student's going to get in, they're going to get injured. They're going to get ill. They're going to slide to an F just like that. A's slide to F's like that. So if I'm getting an A on a diet, say a 30-day no sugar diet, that's like the biggest thing I'm hearing these days. I can't go 40 days without sugar, for crying out loud. But they want me to go 30. So the point I'm trying to make is if you focus on that as an A, where is any energy for anything else? It's going to be D's and F's.
Well, let's break this down for a minute, though. There is a quote by a woman, Harriet Braker. There's a great not breaker like breaker, like BRAIK, right?
Okay.
And her quote on this really just nails it. And what she says is, striving for excellence motivates you. Striving for perfection demoralizes you. So let me be clear before everybody starts emailing me and texting me about this. Let's be clear about what that means to me. So what it's come to mean to me is that we think it's the same thing. And yet I guarantee you what you're talking about, Peggy, and what I'm talking about, it's not. Perfectionism is focused on doing the thing right? How things appear if others think it's done right. Meaning, I'm putting my eggs in your basket. Do you like my eggs? Are they big enough? Do you like brown, but I gave you white? Right. Okay, that's that. Excellence about doing the right thing. It's focused on the reason that you're doing the thing and the result for it to be a success. So let's not confuse this conversation about perfection about not being successful.
Absolutely. Or that life's absolutely.
We're not saying don't be successful. Mm-mm. Of course, we're not saying that. But perfection is a thief of time. It drains your energy like a blood-sucking vampire. It can bully you and criticize you and demand you to step into unachievable outcomes, right? Whatever that is, you're never good enough under perfection, because honestly, perfection is not good enough for itself. See that by the very nature of it.
That's a very good point. Yeah, and the A, we pretty much are chasing to be the same as everybody else. Really, what's an A? Come on, following, a plan, a diet. Okay, you guys, now listen, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we are going to dive just a little bit further into how I help clients determine their BC grade, because everybody's grade is completely different. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm sure you're going to have some questions. I'm going to let you know how you can get those questions to me in the next week or so. And right now you're listening to Coach, Couch, and Coffee with Coach Peggy. And we're going to be right back. Talk to you soon. Hello, hello. Welcome back to Coach, Couch, and Coffee with Coach Peggy. And I am here with my super cool guest, Dr. Pat. And I've loved having you here today, and I've loved your stories that you're sharing. And I could sit and talk to you forever with my awesome unicorn mug. So what I would like to do is I would like to share with you a story, an example of how I try to get a BC wellness grade determined when I work with a client. And often what's really hard when I start working with clients is it's not just, they're very, very confused. You know, what is it like to work with you? I am not going to put you on an exact exercise program. I am not going to put you on a specific nutrition plan. I'm not going to do it because I have to figure out who and what you are. I have to figure out your real world. I have to figure out what curveballs you have in your life. And we need to figure out how many hours in the day you have. How are we going to determine attainable goals to set you up for success? And I'll be honest, most of the time when I start to work with a client, it's kind of the breakdown before the breakthrough. And that is it's deceiving when you get a coach and you're talking to them. You think, oh, I'm headed straight for my A. Oh man, I'm going to lose the 50 pounds. That's why I gave her buzz. And when I say, oh, it's just going to take a while, because I don't coach laterally. That's one of the reasons I left corporate America, because that's where the money is. The money is in write the book, sign them up, and do things laterally so you get new names, all sorts of stuff. I coach deep. I want to know them. I want to know their life, their goals, and I want to make sure that, I'm part of their journey. That's my passion. So let's talk about this. What I'll do is I'll actually sit down, talk about their schedule. How many hours do you work? How many family members do you have? What's your support system? What's your motivation like? What's your self-talk like? What's your spirituality or your organization? All those little components to figure out how the person assigns a grade to themselves, which I despise, but that's how I figure out a baseline. If they're not on a nutrition plan, we might decide together that that's a D, because they're like, I'm not really doing anything. But if they walk every day, or maybe go to the gym a couple times a week, they might grade themselves a B or a C. And so we're balancing that already. But when we come to the mindset category, they might say, I haven't paid a bill in a month. I haven't opened my mail up, in weeks. I avoid it. I'm scared. Or they haven't called their mom and they feel guilty. It's an F. So how are we going to take the time to dial back the A's, take the time to pull that down, get some time, and ramp up those other pillars? So that's really what I'm talking about, is to try to figure out where a person sits for their grade. Because, Dr. Pat, I was kind of telling you during break, I have this client, love him to death, but man, I had to fight with him over dialing him back on his exercise or his BC grade, because he's one of those that still believes you can exercise yourself to goal. I love those. Oh, I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to work out this and I'm going to lose 30 pounds. And they don't have the belief system that they've got to modify their diet and balance all sorts of other things. And I said, no. That A is going to come down to a C. Well, what do you mean by that? Like, I'm not going to reduce my time at the gym. I'm like, yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. And you're going to reduce the intensity and the duration. No. And you go through that to find them more time. Because frankly, we keep doing what we're good at. Don't you think that's true, Dr. Pat? Like, how do you find areas in your life? If you find yourself kind of pulling down in one area that needs some attention, what's your kind of plan of action?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I'm always the best person to see that. I don't know that I'm always the best person to see that I'm pulling down in one area or not. That's why I got my best friend, Linda, right? Yeah. She's been my friend since 1972. Yeah. And she'll stop me and say, really, dude, like that's the fourth piece of apple pie. What the bleep are you doing with that? Right. Awesome. But here's what I've learned. It wasn't until my health failed me in 2004 One day I was healthy, March 31st. I have an anniversary, April 1st of 2004. I was given a workshop. By the end of the day, my entire, what do you call it? My entire immune system completely collapsed. And for the next 10 years, right? The next 10 years, that's what my life was like. It was, how do I figure out what happened? Now, look, I'll tell you, I am one of these people that I believe in integrated medicine, and that's what I did. And because I did that, what worked for me about that was very simple. I learned that, yes, I can use conventional medicine to take care of things that it needs to take care of, but how am I going to build my system back? How am I going to build up the stamina? And so I learned the lesson really the hard way. I don't really believe that that's what our listeners want to do.
No. You know, I always say if I could get back and really get the 20-year-olds to understand how important this will be when they're 50, I probably wouldn't be in business, because we just don't know what we don't know if we haven't walked, our path. So what I'd really like to do, you guys, we're finishing up here a little bit. I'm so thrilled that you've been with us. I'd like to give you just a couple of absolutes that I know. And I absolutely know that you're going to be on the roller coaster of life. I absolutely know that. It's going to happen. We can't always control what's going to be thrown at us. There are two things I really believe that we can control in our life, and that is our presentation style, how we show up, and our attitude. Right? Those are the things that we can really, really, really control. So what I want to tell you is, please take a look at your history right now. Look back a week, a month, a year, and say, how resilient am I? How can I sustain any wellness, any component of my wellness? And I want you to make sure that you set your goals up so that you're successful. Try to look at your whole spectrum, the whole wheel of wellness, and try to balance that out and dial some of the A's down to B's and C's. And I just want to let you know that you can, again, find me at 3wellnesspillars.com. Hop around, play around on my website there. And I'm going to be back every single Monday. And if you want to find Dr. Pat on Transformation Talk Radio, you know how to find her. And anyways, if you want to get in touch with me with a question, I want you to email me at Coach Peggy at 3wellnesspillars.com. Throw me a question. I might give you a giveaway. We're going to start those next week. And you guys, I'm so glad that you joined us. Dr. Pat, let's tie this up today. Thank you for being here.
Well, I want to thank you for having me here at the debut of your fabulous show. And here's what I want to say to everybody out there. The only time I use the word perfect is in this category. What I've been told growing up all my life, that I am perfection as I am. And that thing right there, that was the only time my mom ever used that, and I never really understood it. And what she was saying to me, as I want to say to all of you listening here, is let us not get confused that we can strive to be better at something. But what we're not striving for is to be perfect in somebody else's eyes. We are already more than enough.
That is beautiful.
My friend used to say, whatever you think you are, you're more than that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, you guys, I know that you realize that Sunday is daylight savings time, and that's coming up. And I want to tell you that on Monday, on March 11th, we're going to talk about how do you use your 168 hours a week, because that's absolutely all we have. You can't have any more than that. So thank you for joining me today. This is Coach Couch, and this is Coach Couch and Coffee. See, I haven't had enough coffee.
Yes.
I'm Coach Peggy. Thank you, Dr. Pat, for being with us. Take care.
Let's rock on.
Thank you for listening to Coach Couch and Coffee Radio with me, Coach Peggy Willms. Did you hear something that made you go, or have an aha moment? I live for those. If not, we will get you next time. I will be back every first and third Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific. The tough love you to become smarter, stronger, braver, healthier, and happier. Duh. I will be back with a barrel of positivity, and you never know when a guest might pop in. There is no time for excuses. So don't forget to bring your coffee and an open mind as we talk all things wellness on Coach Couch and Coffee Radio with me, Coach Peggy Willms. Now go grab a ray of sunshine.